Week 6. What's up, buddy?
Hey, how's it going? This is awesome. Like, I'm on the Unfantasy Football League fan cast, or well, I don't want to say fan cast, but we're all fans of you guys.
I was gonna say, John, you look better, dude.
Yeah, I look a lot like John, don't I? I had to throw on the hat real quick. Yeah. You should probably give them some backstory on how I ended up on the show and how.
I sent you a link 2 minutes ago. 2 minutes, and you were like, "Dude, I just woke up." And I was like, perfect. Let's come and, trash talk and talk about some football. And you were like, I'm in.
I can talk about football, all day long. I just looked at my results too, so I'm excited about how at least one of my teams did. So that's cool.
Yep, you definitely rocked it in the OG league this week. Ended up tying my wife, who was pleasantly surprised that she placed anything last night. So congrats, dude.
Yeah,
congrats.
Thanks, man.
Picked up some cards on the wire, and it paid out.
Yeah, they totally paid out because I was struggling with those cards that I had from the OG franchise that I picked up. So I was like, man, I need some new cards. So picked up some off the floor last week and was able to play a couple of them, and it paid off. So that's exciting.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Good stuff. What'd you think of the games this weekend?
They were good. Unfortunately, they weren't necessarily as like I got two different things working. Like on the unfan side, some of them didn't maybe go the way that I thought they were going to go from my predictions. But on the real fantasy week, I won some things. Won another week. I'm 6-0 in my fantasy league with my kids and family members and friends. So I'm rocking that. So I'm starting to figure out both sides of this. So it sounds like if I won the OG league and I got a 6-0 record in my regular fantasy, that seems pretty good for a rookie and unfan.
It's like the mayor from The Nightmare Before Christmas, when the head turns around and he has like a different facial expression. It's the same way I watch fantasy football now. Cause me too, I'm, rocking it in my normal fantasy league, kind of got crushed this week in unfantasy. So I'm in a yes/no scenario where I see a punt and I'm like, yes, but then I have the defense and I'm like, no. So, it's kind of an interesting Sunday week after week here, but man, I feel like every year there's 1 week where, there's, pretty decent sized upsets and, teams that, potentially had walkover wins or decent enough matchups that you feel, okay, look, they're going to keep the momentum rolling. They're on fire. They hit a brick wall, and it seems to happen in chunks. And this week was definitely one of those chunks. The two that stand out, San Francisco and Philly, two undefeated Goliaths go down. They're the 1972 Miami Dolphins can breathe a fresh of breath air. Their record of the perfect season continues. And it lives on for another year.
Yeah, absolutely. Those were the two games that, that everybody almost would have thought the San Fran Cleveland game was a lock. Like, just would have thought like that was one of the locks of the week. And obviously CMC goes down in that game with the oblique injury that causes, fantasy managers to be like, oh no, because, he's so integral to the offense, but you're hoping that they've got a great defense that they're going to be able to hold back a Deshaun Watson-less Cleveland team, and they still can't do it. Which
I mean, we saw Cleveland struggle mightily against Pittsburgh when Deshaun didn't play a couple weeks ago, right? And CMC, we've said it on. John brings it up all the time. He's like one hit away from having a season-ending or season-changing, path on the way that he's been playing. But it wasn't only him. I mean, Debo went down too, and it put all of the stress on Ayuk. And look, credit to Purdy, man. He got the team in position to win the game. He drove that ball down the field and, rookie kicker choked, credit to the Cleveland defense, Cleveland all around, man. They got the job done at home. And I think they turned some heads in the league. So it's going to be interesting to see where things go from here. They obviously got that loss out of the way. Now they can just focus on making sure that they stay at top of that division. Cleveland definitely needed that victory with Pittsburgh on the bye and Baltimore winning early in London. Did you happen to catch that game over a bowl of Cheerios or what?
I did not catch that game over Cheerios, unfortunately. Yeah, I watched it like when I say I catch a game, usually I'm watching it in the stream. Like I have some daily fantasy stuff that I do. I do some, so I watch the numbers. So I didn't necessarily catch like the whole game and all the details of that. So unfortunately I don't have, what is the NFL pass, like where you can watch all the activities that take place. Man, that's something I should probably at some point like break down and just make that investment, because it's like when you play the DFS stuff, it's good to kind of see what's happening with your players, because you just see that they play at a different speed. But yeah, unfortunately I didn't catch that one.
So I don't know how long it's been, I guess over 10, 15 years at this point now, but Red Zone, have you ever watched that show?
I have not, but I know about it. Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's
definitely
something
that would be worth it.
The greatest thing that I think football has ever come up with. It is it's on a slight delay. So if you're watching your fantasy scores and things like that, you'll see things happen before it broadcasts live, but it is essentially somebody managing the remote control for you. And they bounce around to all the important aspects of the game. Now, obviously, you miss out on, some of the key components like, the momentum shifts and things like that in each respective game. But for fantasy, I mean, there's no better tool, right? They show all the critical components with respect to fantasy, all the turnovers, all the touchdowns, every scoring play from every game. They do a really good job. Scott Hansen does really well in broadcasting that. And I mean, I'm glued to that, whether I'm on the go, I have it on my phone with an earbud in my ear, just listening and seeing, which one of my guys are messing up and which one of my teams are actually messing up that I can chalk up as a victory here.
Yeah, so, no, that's a good one. Like, it's definitely something like to be honest, like I hadn't really got into fantasy football until about 10 years ago. And a boss thought that I would be like an easy win. So he's like, hey, we got this 10-person league. This guy dropped out at the last minute. Do you want to buy in? And it was my boss. And I was like, what do you say to a boss? You're like, of course. Yeah. Let's, how much money do you need? And, what is fantasy football? Like, that was the next question. And then, so what I did is I went around and I started asking the guys that had done success or had success in like past years, like, what do you invest in? Like, what are you looking at? So they gave me, some of their tools, and they didn't realize what a data geek I am. So I'm jumping in like Fantasy Pros and Fantasy Labs and like looking for all these statistics about air yards and all this stuff like that. And all of a sudden, like at the end of the year, this guy that knows nothing about fantasy football finished second in the league. And I lost only because Cam Newton went off in the playoffs. And I called it the Cam Newton camshaft, because like he had like 44 points that day. And that was the difference between me winning a league as a rookie, never playing fantasy before, to coming in second. And obviously second's a big achievement, but yeah,
it's huge, man.
Fell in love.
Huge. And sounds like you were a little ringer in the league.
Well, they were definitely looking, for my contribution, because it wasn't a cheap buy-in either. It was like, it would like, I was like, this is a meaningful amount of money that they were asking for me. And I was like, well, I better give it, some effort. So that's kind of like with the whole unfan stuff. Like, I'm starting to build spreadsheets and try to figure out, okay, which teams have, higher amounts of punts, and who's performing penalties week over week that get accepted and all this stuff like that. So I'm starting to geek out, and that's what's so great about this and why I'm having so much fun.
And that's the point, man. I mean, it's all about really having fun and, kind of shifting your mindset to look up analytics that you normally wouldn't need to. With respect to the penalties, I mean, it's, one of the things that I've kind of learned, just obviously doing the data and the statistics and, obviously working with John, building and crafting the architecture of the league. It's not necessarily which teams like take the most penalties. It's which teams draw the most penalties. And whatever teams that those teams are playing week after week, then those are the ones that you want to try to sneak into your lineup. Teams like Miami, for example, that have a lot of speed on the outside, chances are they're going to draw a lot of pass interference penalties, right? So nobody can keep up with Tyreek. The only way to do it is to hold them, pass interference, whatever it is. So you can rake up some pretty decent penalty yards, assuming, of course, it's the right matchup. But again, everybody has their own little strategy. You clearly had a good one. I wanted to actually run through your lineup in the OG league and, kind of examine which teams you selected, because it did win you the OG week. It looks like on offense, you had Denver, definitely a solid pick for that. Thursday night game, kicked off the week, AFC West division rival against Kansas City, who did not look sharp But then again, Denver did not either. What were your options in there, and like what did you really have? I mean, were you forced to play them? Did you just think that was a good matchup? What were your thoughts behind that?
Obviously, when you see Denver in any matchup this year, it feels like a good unfan selection. So having those Denver cards like all over the place seems like a good thing. Just in so far with my experience, but yeah, like for me, I didn't have a lot of other options. I can actually pull up my team. I don't have it memorized, but yeah,
you had the Saints against Houston, so I guess you made the right call for sure.
Yeah, that's yeah. So like with the Saints, it was definitely going to be the better option. Like you pick that way. Like that's how you come up with it, is like, what are my alternatives?
Yep. Well, I mean, defensively, I think this is where you kind of got hit the hardest. You ended up going with Washington. They did, decent enough. They pulled out the win in Atlanta. And frankly, I was a little shocked by that. I lost my pick on that one because, Ritter, that's the first home game he's ever lost, high school, college, or professional. So, I guess that cherry got popped and, at the hands of Washington of all teams. Then it looks like you went heavy on Cleveland, special teams and penalties. And boy, that penalty card, man, that raked it up for you. I think they had over 10 penalties and, amassed over 100 yards. That landed you almost 40 points in the penalty category alone. And then, of course, last night, 1 yard short, man. Chargers blew it against the Cowboys and it landed you 25 points and the win for the week.
Yeah. That would have been a heartbreaker to see that. I mean, I watched the end of the game like everybody else. I saw it actually in my feed because I couldn't catch it because we were doing a show last night. So I missed a lot of that. But man, like those are heartbreakers to just see that take place when it's like, oh, so close, so close.
They had the game, man. They had the game just like the Giants had the game. They blew it on the 1 yard line as well. I think, from the Giants' perspective, they not only blew it on the 1 yard line, they blew it on the 1 yard line at the end of each half. So they complete breakdown of clock management at the end of the first half, didn't get any points out of it. For their credit, they did actually, handle Buffalo for what it was worth. I didn't think Taylor played that bad. They said that they're going back to Daniel Jones. I don't know what the result of that is going to look like. It was good to see Saquon back, but one of the things that really bothered me about that, I mean, you're a professional football guru right now. When the game is on the line, on the road, in a hostile environment, in a game you were supposed to lose by ridiculous amount of points, why do you not give the ball to the best player on your team? Why do you put it into a second string quarterback, not once, but twice on the same, virtually the same play? One got flagged, the other did not. They just couldn't get the ball. It was too high of a pass. I mean, if I'm looking at this from Saquon's perspective, I'm back, I'm healthy. You give me that damn ball on the 1 yard line, I will figure out a way to get in there. And they didn't do it. This was shades of the Super Bowl with Seattle and New England, which obviously cost the Seahawks the game and the ring. But, again, this is the type of year that New York is having. They're not finding ways to win games. There was way too many problems that happened. They did not deserve to win that. Buffalo snuck it out, with New England losing, the Jets winning, Miami winning. Buffalo needed that win. They definitely did, especially coming back from London last week and losing a key game to the Jags, a game that they thought they should have won. It was a nice little bounce back game for them. Tough break for the Giants, man.
Yeah, that was a tough break for your Giants. Yeah, honestly, I didn't grow up playing football, so I don't know what a football coach is thinking in those types of situations. Or are they just overthinking it? Like, oh, they absolutely know we're going to go with Saquon. Like this, we're going to give the ball to Saquon. So we got to do some, trickery. We got to catch them off guard by having Tyrod, take it. So like, yeah, no, that's the thing that I still don't understand about football. Like, because I never played the game. And I watch, obviously now the last 10 years with fantasy stuff, like, why don't they just keep feeding their best players. Yeah, like just keep feeding their best players. They're the best player for a reason. They're going to have those breakout opportunities. They're going to find those holes. I don't necessarily think Saquon's back at 100%. I watched that game. I think that he's back, but I think that some of his explosiveness is going to come in the next few weeks. Like, I think we're going to see him return to form. So maybe there was something with, we don't think that he's 100%. Maybe he was 80%. So we'd rather take our chances, running a different play, giving it to, somebody else. So
you need the win, man. You need the win. You need the boost of confidence. You need this guy to say, you know what? I am an integral piece of this team and this franchise. You give the guy the ball in that situation. Even if Buffalo knows it's coming, you still give him that chance, right? If you're coaching a basketball team and you have Kobe on your team, are you not going to give him the ball with 2 seconds left when you're down by 1? Like, of course you are. I mean, you have to do it in order for the fake and for like the decoy to be effective. I feel like they just didn't even have that opportunity. They didn't give it to him, and that's on coaching. But at the end of the first half, that's on Taylor. And frankly, who knows how things would have panned out from there. So tough break in Western New York. Buffalo gets the W. Giants are still in the mire of things. Out in Vegas, the Patriots definitely their season is toast, man.
I think they're playing for Caleb Williams, to be honest, or Harrison Jr. or something. I really feel like they're playing for Caleb Williams at this point. Like, you put a quarterback under Belichick with his caliber, like, he's a once in a lifetime kind of talent, I think, is what everybody's saying. Now, he didn't have that great of a weekend against Notre Dame. So there's those breakdowns. Like, you can say, oh, well, he faced some tougher competition on Saturday and look what happened. But, I still think the talent is there. That kid is going to be fantastic. So I think all these teams that are bottom dwelling in the NFL have their eyesights on this once in a lifetime, or at least, not maybe once in a generation, more, not a whole lifetime. But, there's very few people like him, like a Mahomes that comes up every few years. So yeah, I think there's going to be some teams that we're going to see that they just kind of start trading away players and checking out. Denver could be on that list. Definitely New England as well. So sorry, John, but maybe you're going to have a great quarterback next year.
Well, I mean, Mac Jones definitely isn't the answer. And, you bring up Belichick. I mean, we talked about it briefly last week. Like, his nuts are in the ringer here, man. Like, they're on the bandsaw. Like, they're really ready to part ways with him, which is shocking to me. But, look, at the end, you look at the teams that are kind of at the bottom. You got Chicago. They're not moving on from Fields. Bryce Young just got drafted by Carolina. They're going to give this kid a little bit of a shot. New England is definitely in the prime picking for that. Now, notoriously, they've been, pretty weird when it comes to drafts and giving up draft picks. You bring up Denver. That's an interesting one. I'd be curious if Russell gets traded before the deadline, because they definitely don't want to draft somebody under his tutelage without, getting something in return. Because they definitely gave up a ton for him. So we'll see how it all plays out, man. But, Vegas did improve to 3-3. Again, it wasn't as pretty. The only thing that really, I mean, obviously Garoppolo left the game. He ended up going to the hospital. A lot of key injuries this weekend from quarterbacks. Tannehill went down as well. So, it's going to be interesting to see on a really interesting week 7 coming up with a lot of buys, how these teams are going to fare. Tennessee is on the bye, so at least he'll have an opportunity to recover. Vegas is not. So it's going to be interesting to see who they call upon to lead that team heading into week 7. And then, of course, the other biggest upset, dude. I mean, who the hell would have thought the Jets would have beat the Eagles?
Yeah, that was unexpected. But if you saw how I didn't see the full game, but I watched the defense, and they are just shutting down. I think Salem made we're making these great quarterbacks look. Do you have his comment? Because I don't have it. I could have pulled that together, but it was something about he basically saying, we've taken some good quarterbacks and made them look not so great. So that's the gist of it. And I think the defense did that again, with Hurts. Hurts was making mistakes, throwing interceptions. They got him off of his rhythm. And it was just, Devontae Smith dropped a couple balls that he should have caught, hit him in the hands kind of thing. And, he said, I just got to catch the ball. Like that was the, like there, I think a reporter asked him, what are you going to learn from this situation? Catch the ball. Like I won't say what he said, but it was basically catch the ball, man. That's what you got to do. So,
games like this, man, they're, from a coaching perspective. I mean, I remember playing too, like, you're up against a team that is, almost, I don't want to say a walkover because nothing's a walkover, especially in a league like this, but, a game that you pretty much have confidence that you're going to walk in and win that game, right? I mean, Miami, if you watch that first quarter against Carolina, they almost fell into that same trap. They went down 14-0 to the Panthers. Now, that offense is obviously strong enough that they came back and they ended up closing it out. But these types of games, man, you tend to overlook. You tend to under prepare and you start looking for the next week and, can I get a couple more reps in for, the opponent that makes a little bit more sense a week from now instead of looking the 6 inches in front of your face. And it looks like San Francisco and Philly both got caught with their pants down on that one. Speaking of Carolina, the epic fail hunt is still intact. They are 0-6. I don't know where things end up at the end of the year. They looked good in that first half. I still don't believe Thielen is a number one wide receiver threat. He looked like it in that first quarter, but then he went invisible afterwards. I also don't feel Miami has the greatest defense. So, for them to shut down, potentially the best asset that Carolina has, which is their offense, in that second half was something special. But, Miami's offense is still very dangerous, man. Mostert had 3 touchdowns. Tyreek Hill went off. He did have a little bit of a hammy issue, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens with them this week and who ends up, getting sidelined due to injuries. But, we'll see how it all plays out. Did you catch any of the Miami game at all? Any highlights?
I did not catch the highlights. Again, I saw the box scores because I had a lot of lineups with Mostert and Tyreek and Waddle, and it's hard not to play those week over week with just how explosive that offense is right now. Tyreek, like I was a little concerned that he was going to have one of those off weeks, and then just immediately, second quarter and on, they just started feeding him. You feed your best players. Like you said earlier with the penalties and stuff like that, teams can only stop him by holding him or letting him go and getting burned. So like, what are you going to do? Like the dude is explosive. It ignites the rest of the team. You see Mostert, getting his feeds in the red zone so he can make some, easy scores for touchdowns and stuff like that. So yeah, no, unfortunately I didn't catch it, but man, I loved watching some of my lineups that I have in Rainmakers go off. So yeah, I finished 267th out of like 26,000 people in one of my lineups because it was stacked with Miami. Yeah, I had Goff, Mostert, Waddle, and Tyreek, because they're the only like rare and elite cards that I had in this thing that I just started a couple weeks ago. And I was like, oh, well, I got to use all these guys. And man, I was just one card away from making some serious money. So yeah, that was exciting to watch from that standpoint.
Be careful playing against Carolina. Like one of these weeks, one of these teams are going to get bit hard. Like we talk about overlooking teams, like somebody's gonna, they are going to shock the world at some point this year or not. I mean, I don't see them as bad as a team as the Detroit or the Cleveland teams that didn't win a game. Obviously the 76 Buccaneers, they didn't win a game and they looked awful, missing punts and things like that. But, speaking of the Bucs, they rocked out the creamsicle uniforms this past weekend. In homage to our epic fail card. Didn't help them much. They actually looked like the 76 team, but they also went up against arguably one of the better teams in the NFC in Detroit. And I never thought I'd say that in my lifetime, but kudos to Detroit, man. Look, they are putting together complete games. I love what they're doing at every level with the coaching staff. I wasn't the biggest Jared Goff fan entering the year after what I saw him do last season, but I'm starting to come around. I think that even without Gibbs, their running game is pretty solid. When Gibbs come back, he's going to have a nice little complement to that offense. Defensively, they're getting the job done. I mean, look, they held the Buccaneers to 2 field goals at their home field, man. So, and this is not an offense that has been lighting up the scoreboard, but they've been doing enough to get some wins, man. They were a 3-win team heading into that game. So it's going to be interesting to see what that NFC North ends up being.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, with that Detroit team, I mean, I think they're is it Montgomery's their lead? He went down, so you now have Montgomery and Gibbs both down. So they're doing it with kind of the backup of the backups. So and you got like their tight end Laporte, like he's coming on, like getting lots of targets, making catches. So they're finding a way. They're finding a way with their offense, and Goff is good about that. He can distribute the ball. They don't have to be so, one-sided. We can only do this because we've got this great running back that can run through the tackles and stuff like that. So
they have an explosion. They have an explosive player in Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean, he didn't play 2 weeks ago, but he looked like he was back in full form this past week. And it brings back a lot of memories, man. You had Johnson that used to play for that team. I mean, these guys, I mean, they were, what was he called? Megatron?
Megatron. Stafford Megatron connection was awesome. Like that was pre-me, like in fantasy. So I didn't get to enjoy any of those years, but man, I came in kind of at the tail of him, him leaving the league, but man, he was awesome to watch. Just football wise, like could catch any contested ball in any situation, and just take off. Man, it was fun.
I mean, we had a joke at one point with this on fantasy stuff where players would rather retire in their prime than continue to play for Detroit. Barry Sanders and Johnson, and it obviously doesn't play now. Players I guess would love to be a part of that team because they're rolling.
Yeah, and it's the coaching. I mean, look at that coach. Like he is, he has done such a fantastic job coming in and just giving. I mean, sometimes it's just the belief. Like you got to have somebody that believes so much in the people and the program that it's infectious, and everybody starts to believe. Like they believe they can win. They believe they can close out games and they can win the close ones. And I'm not saying the other coaches don't do it, but man, when you hear that guy talk, I don't. I'm drawing a blank on his name right now, but just a fantastic coach from that perspective. Just everybody believes in what they're doing. So watch out in Detroit.
Dan Campbell, man, he's
Dan Campbell. Yeah.
He's definitely one of those light a fire under your ass type coaches, man. And I think that that doesn't resonate with all players, but you don't need to resonate with all players. You just need to make sure they do their job. And that's clearly what he's been able to accomplish there. Took a little bit, went through a lot of ups and downs, but similar to the way that I guess Minnesota played games last season, Detroit is finding games to win. And in this league, that's all that really matters. You don't need to be the best team on paper. You don't need to be the best team in the league week after week. You just need to figure out ways to win games week after week. And I think that's what Detroit has been able to do, stemming back all the way from the first Thursday night game against the Super Bowl champs in Kansas City. They took into a hostile environment and actually walked out of there with the W. And it's a credit to Campbell and what he's been able to do, to your point. So let's jump into some unfantasy standings real quick and just talk about that. We have a couple teams that have eclipsed the 500 point mark for the season. To my demise, Dive Eagles Dive, because they are in my division, and Hulk's Bad Dog, who's in your division. Both have eclipsed that 500 point threshold and sit atop the overall standings. Week 6, however, belonged to Dropaholics. They were the only ones that eclipsed the century mark, followed by where my rookie's at. And boy, was I eager to get on this one to rip John, because for the first time ever, he jumped on the podium as the weekly loser. And that's what he gets for betting against the Jets.
Yeah. Yeah. Show me your Kansas City's. Sorry about the basement, man.
But like I said in the email, he is in the Canadian football division of the Unfantasy League this year. So still sitting atop barely, while teams are eclipsing 500 points. He just barely got over 400. So, nice. Either way, division champ makes it to the Unfantasy playoffs. So we'll see how all that plays out. As we mentioned, you sat atop the OG league. My wife also finished, tied with you actually in that week. And now she is leading the overall standings in the OG league. Not by much, but Hulk's Bad Dog, who's been very aggressive in the playing card in the OpenSea Unfantasy playing card. He's been scooping up some cards and setting some solid lineups, and he's looking dangerous in that league right now. Mad Max finishes 1 yard short, and our infamous loser of the week record holder, America's Unfantasy team, finishes in the basement in that one as well.
Nice.
How's your league looking? Who's on top of that one?
I slipped out of the first place for the first week, so it took me till week 6 to fall out. But Catastrophic Failures is had a good week, and so did Dropaholics. So both of those are kind of rising through the ranks. Unfortunately, I'm managing both of those because 2 of my friends dropped out at the last minute, and I haven't been able to replace them. So I've been setting their lineups, setting those lineups. So I'm really winning, but I'm not really winning because my team is, if you're not first, you're last. I don't want one of these franchises that I got for somebody else to beat me. So, because I'm not buying cards for them, I'm honestly just using what they have. And I'm stocking up for my OG fantasy league, and buying cards for this one. So that makes me sad that, the ones that, that that I couldn't get a fantasy manager for are beating me.
It seems to be a recurring theme with a league like this, because last season my unborn son won the championship. And all I did was do the same thing. I set the lineups just to make sure that there were legal lineups, didn't get him any cards. I had award cards and things like that. But at some point I just had my daughter pick his lineup because obviously he wasn't here yet.
Right.
And he ended up taking down the trophy, man, which is hilarious. But look, still, many weeks of the season left. I mean, I have a feeling that you have a solid team. And you're actually getting an extra pack of cards this week along with Hulk. Yes. 2 guys that don't need it because San Francisco actually finished atop of the Unfantasy point total for the week. Nice. Which, for 5 straight weeks I've been singing their praise as the best team in football, and lo and behold, they disappoint me with the top of the Unfantasy scoring. In fact, number 2 was Philly. So go figure that one out. The 2 teams that have not lost a game yet this season finish 1-2 atop the Unfantasy scoreboard. Pretty crazy when you think about it that way.
That is so crazy. Such a change in fortunes in just 1 week. And that just goes to show you what happened when you have these injuries, or you just have these breakdowns that take place. Because any given Sunday, I've always told my kids that I got my kids involved in fantasy football 10 years ago too, because I just wanted them to play. And I was like, don't overlook teams. Don't overlook, opportunities just because it says their opponent is 31st and whatever doesn't mean it's a lock. You gotta think through this stuff. You gotta play the percentages that sometimes, teams are just going to be off, or they're going to have a key injury. They're going to lose a quarterback. I mean, I definitely was a lot more excited about my Colts until Richardson went down. We had a return to, Minshew madness last week, and we were like, yes. And then this week he came back down from those high expectations. We're like, okay, we got to do some things, change up some things, make this more an offense that's going to work for him versus one that works for Richardson. So, because it sounds like Richardson's going to be out for a whole year, possibly with that shoulder injury. So he could have season-ending surgery based on what Irsay said today. So that's sad, but yeah.
Well, I mean, I think a big problem was not necessarily offensively, but defensively. I mean, look, Jacksonville has been on fire since their London trip. They did come back from London and then posted 31 points at home. Look, I think they're a good team. I think ETN is a great running back. I think that, yes, if Ingram can get a little bit more involved in the scoring, they're going to be a dangerous team, man. Because I think Lawrence is a good quarterback. I think, again, he's the kind of guy who is used to winning, sniffs it out, and figures out ways to make that happen. There's weeks where he proves me completely wrong, but again, everybody forgets they were 1 yard away from the AFC Championship last year in knocking out Kansas City, and they fumbled at the 1 yard line. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting, but defensively, man, I think Indy, there's no excuses there. They definitely, 2-3 years ago, they had the best defense in football. I don't know what kind of transpired from that, but, I think that division is still very much up for grabs. Houston even coming into the mix now with the potential rookie of the year candidate in CJ Stroud. So, we'll see how that happens. But, after completely embarrassing the Patriots 34-0 on the road, the Saints go down to Houston and completely blow it. So chalk that up as an upset. I don't know. I mean, frankly, I'm starting to believe that Houston is not that walkover team like we saw over the last couple of years.
No, they've got a tough defense. Like if you look at their drafting over the last couple of years, they have been stocking up on that defense. So that defense is getting, really good at, keeping teams from scoring a lot of points on them. So that puts CJ Stroud in a position where he doesn't have to play from behind as a rookie and make rookie mistakes. I think he threw his first interception this weekend. If I look at the numbers correctly, I don't have them in front of me, but I think that streak is over, but just how phenomenal he's been. But if you look at the scoring, and like these games are not out of control. They have not put him in a situation where he has to be a gunslinger out there throwing the deep balls, trying to make up for what the defense can't do. So when we've got things working on both sides of the ball, you got a pretty, so far he's like been the best rookie quarterback that in the league for many, many years. Like there hasn't been anyone like him for a few years. So yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of positive things out of Houston going forward. Doesn't mean that there won't be some breakdowns, but yeah, he's still a rookie. He's going to make rookie mistakes. He hasn't done that to date really. But I think the defense is always going to keep him in it.
There was a stretch, I want to say it was for about almost 10 years where the NFC South division had a different winner every year. There was never consecutive winners. And I feel like the AFC South is starting to trend in that direction. Tennessee is not the mighty Tennessee that we've seen with Henry. And, obviously they lost, they basically rugged out A.J. Brown from the team. I don't know why the hell they did that, but it has not panned out. And Tannehill went down. So I don't know how that team's going to look moving forward. Obviously, you brought up Richardson. Jacksonville is a coin flip week after week, depending on which Trevor Lawrence shows up. And, if Houston's on the rise, man, I mean, we're looking at a pretty evened out division, which is pretty exciting, just from a football fan perspective.
Yeah. I think coming into the year, I think everybody's expectations were Jacksonville was going to run away with this, or it was going to be like Jacksonville and Tennessee. But I mean, we're still early in the season. I mean, you got a lot of 3-2 teams, like a lot of 3-3 teams now. There's a lot of season still left to be played. I try to remind myself of that. Like, the Colts could completely unravel and not win a remainder, game of the remainder of the year. We had a year like that a few years ago, where they, looked like they were going to kind of come out of this first quarter looking good. But, I don't know. It's just, man, it's every week. That's what's so exciting about football. You can't, if it was easy and you could predict it, like, we'd all be winning money in DFS and, we'd know exactly who to pick every week on our unfantasy teams. And, we could pick the losers easy, but it's just, I mean, that's the fun part of it. You got 17 games to, try to figure it out from week to week based on injuries and all this other stuff. And that's what I love about it. I can't really get into like the other fantasy sports like baseball or basketball because they play so many games. Like how do you keep control of all that stuff? Like, there's just so many variables.
Definitely a different strategy to it for sure. And that, look, to your point on all that, man, that's what makes those division games that much more valuable, right? And, again, it kind of hurt Indy to lose a division game like that because you only get 2 cracks at those per season. Yeah. So that being said, you ready to jump into some week 7 picks?
Yeah, let's do some picks. How did you do last week with your picks?
Not good. I didn't even bother tallying them up. But when I started to see some of those upsets and things like that, I mean, I'm pretty sure I figured around 500, maybe a little lower. I was trying to put this thing together pretty quickly here this morning, so I didn't have a chance to look and review my picks, but they are documented.
8-6. I was 8-6. I had 8 winners, 6 losers. So I felt pretty good about my picks. I obviously missed a couple of the ones that everybody else, and I can never really, sometimes I can bet against the Colts, but with that Jaguar game, I wanted to pick the Colts to lose to them, but I just couldn't do it. So, there's picks like that you're always going to have. You're like, I think Jaguars are the better team, but let's just go with, I'm going to pick the Colts because that's my team.
Yeah, I say this week after week, man, but those division games, no matter how good or bad the teams are, those are really coin flips, man. They could be 2-3, or they could be 57-56, right? I mean, those are the types of games that division games kind of, reveal themselves with. And, that's, again, what makes it really exciting. So speaking of the Jags, man, they open up week 7 in the Superdome on Thursday Night Football, Jacksonville at the Saints. Again, Saints kind of, dropped the ball a little bit this past weekend in Houston. Jacksonville looked amazing. Saints are coming in as the 3-point favorite. What are your thoughts on this game?
Saints to lose.
Saints to lose. I'm going Saints to lose as well. I think Jaguars are riding a pretty decent, train three game win streak right now. They're going to keep it flowing.
Yeah, they didn't show any wear and tear from spending 2 weeks in London. And you would expect, like, normally teams take that week off coming back. You didn't see that on Sunday. So, I think they ride the momentum. I think you see, them upset the Saints at home. So,
yep, definitely. And, I think they look home in London. So we'll see how that looks.
Yeah.
Okay. No London game, no Europe game this weekend. So no Cheerios and football on Sunday. Kickoff starts at 1:00 on Sunday. And, we have a good old fashioned NFC South rival. Atlanta goes down to Tampa. Tampa again blew it against the Lions this week. Falcons blew it against the Commanders. 2.5 point favorite for the Bucs right now. Low scoring game predicted. I'm going to say that the Bucs kind of get their shit together and Falcons lose it in Tampa.
I'm gonna go with the Bucs to lose.
Jumping on the Falcons wagon, huh?
Jumping on the Falcons wagon. I like their core, like what they're doing so far this year. So I'm gonna say they spring back this week.
I like seeing Pitts being brought into the offensive mix. I mean, I always felt like, Atlanta did some damage when they had a decent enough tight end. So, it's good to see that kind of play out again. Also in the early slates, we got Buffalo heading to Foxborough. The hapless Patriots are 8.5 point, losers, I guess, in this one. Josh Allen seemed to kind of, hobble off the field a little bit after that win against the Giants on Sunday night. Do you see him playing in a game like this? Do you think they give him that week off? I mean, obviously he wants to be on the field, especially against the Patriots, a hapless Patriots, and get that win in a division game. I'm going to go ahead and say the Patriots keep their slide. I don't know if Allen's going to play, but I think the Bills still take it.
Yeah, I think with Kyle Allen, still they win. I'm comfortable enough with all the other pieces that they have in that, both on both sides of the ball, that I think this New England team doesn't have any answer for it.
I said it a couple weeks ago, or maybe it was last week, man. Stephon Diggs is arguably one of the best receivers we've seen over the past 7 or 8 year stretch. Easily. I don't think I can think of one or two other guys that even come close to what he's been able to pull off year after year. 1:00 also, we have Cleveland going into Indy, facing off against your Colts. I don't know if Watson's going to play. Obviously Richardson is not. Browns are 2-point favorites in this. What's your take?
What's my fan take, or what's my reality take?
I think that says it all, man. But
I actually on this game, it's one of those coin flips, quite honestly, because you got probably 2 backup quarterbacks that are going to be leading these teams. The offenses or the defenses, I think, are very similar as far as, so I'm gonna say Cleveland to lose, just because, if it's a 50-50, I got to go with my home team.
One of the best things I saw this weekend out of Cleveland was Kareem Hunt getting into the end zone. And I always thought that obviously I love Nick Chubb, and I think he's the best running back on that team and that franchise. But I always felt like they underutilized what Hunt could bring to an offense, especially coming out of the backfield and having the ability to catch the ball. So it's good to see him back on the team. It's good to see him making plays on that team, especially against a defense like San Fran this past week. I got to say the Colts lose this at home, man.
Yeah. Hey, no, that, like I said, a 50-50 split. The Kareem Hunt take, definitely. I'm agreeing with you on that. I think he wasn't ready the first week that he came back. You saw more Kareem Hunt this past weekend. I didn't see the game, but I can say that when they had the tandem, that was an unstoppable tandem when they're both healthy. Because Kareem Hunt was fabulous when he played for the Kansas City Chiefs. So him coming over to Cleveland, I thought that he still had it. He was a holdout until somebody picked him up because of injuries this year, because he knows he's a talent. The Colts even looked at that kid. So, and I say he's a kid because he's probably about the same age as my kids. So, but I think he's fantastic. I wish I had him on one of my rosters, because, I think as the season goes along, they're just going to lean more and more on him. Not that Jerome Ford is bad. He's young. He's a rookie. He's not a chain, that kid with the explosiveness and, that's just like a different level of talent. So yeah, yep. For Cleveland, I'm going to say, I don't disagree with you, but I got to go with my home team. So Cleveland to lose for me.
50-50 split, man. You got to go with the heart, right?
Yeah.
This is one of the more surprising lines of the week. You got Detroit going into Baltimore as the underdog, a 5-1 team as the underdog, obviously on the road. But, even though Baltimore played well, they beat Tennessee this weekend across the pond. I don't see them being that dangerous, oh shit, they're on my schedule team this year. And you take a team and you see what Detroit has done. This is an interesting line. Obviously, they're predicting a lot of points. The over-under is 42 on that. But I also don't think that Baltimore has earned the right to be the favorite in this game. I'm going with Baltimore losing, and I think Detroit keeps it moving, man.
I'm going to agree with you on that one for sure. I have not seen what I was expecting out of Lamar this year. So he's making mistakes. I don't know, and I can't, I don't know what happens with the psychology when you're playing for the money and then when you get the money, but sometimes when you get the money, you just don't play for the money like you did prior. So that happens with some players. I'm not saying that's happening with Lamar. I think he's just having an off couple of games because we have not seen the Lamar Jackson we expected, so far this year. I'm a fantasy holder for him. He's on my team, and week over week, he's scoring points, but he's not scoring the 20 plus. He doesn't have that high, breakout game yet where he's had 35 points and he's rushed for 2 and thrown for 3 and that kind of stuff. You're just not seeing that yet with this team. And I don't know if it's the pieces because, they lost, their running back at the beginning of the year, like they always do. So, they're going with some backups, but they're all professionals. These guys are great. There's so much little difference between your number 1 and your 2 in most of these teams. So you expect them to just keep playing, but that's not happening with this Ravens team. So I'm going to say, I agree with you on the Ravens loss.
Yeah, Lamar's been making some very interesting decisions, and I think that a strength of his game is the ability to scramble out of the pocket, and he hasn't really wanted to move in that direction. He's really tried to force the ball down the field, and in some instances it works out great, like it did this past week, but in some cases it doesn't, man. And that's not his strength. His strength is to be a dual threat, and if he eliminates one of those threats himself, that gives the defense an advantage, man. So we'll see if the Lions can capitalize this week.
For sure.
Vegas goes up to Chicago as only a 3-point favorite. Now, here's what I learned about Chicago over the last 2 years. They are as only good as Justin Fields is. And if he's not on the field, they're not good. I mean, Chicago's not a good team overall. They are a Justin Fields team. And he's been great, but he can't pick up the whole team on his shoulders and ride this out. I made a joke in the email, and Jack's here, so I'm glad he'll appreciate this. Minnesota beat Chicago in Chicago, and nobody noticed, right? Nobody cared. It's just one of those games that, was irrelevant. I think Vegas, obviously they had a tough loss against LA. They should have won that game. Khalil Mack went crazy with sacks. I don't know where Garoppolo is in this scenario, but frankly, I don't think the offense really needs him. I think that they're doing okay with their receiving core. I think Myers is having a career year, complemented obviously by whatever Devontae Adams brings to the field week after week. I'd like to see Josh Jacobs explode a little bit. I think he's been a little quiet as, the defending rushing champion of the season. But I think this could potentially be a breakout game like that on the road for the Raiders. So I'm going to take them going up to Chicago and walking out of there with the W and being over 500.
Yeah. I mean, even if this is two backup quarterbacks, leading the teams, I'm with you. I see Chicago losing, Raiders win. So the loser for the week is going to be Chicago at home. Yeah. And I'm a homer for Chicago because, that's our other team just north of us here in Indiana. So, I know they're dealing with a lot of injuries. They lost Herbert, their running back, and they've got, Fields obviously dealing with some stuff now. I got DJ Moore in my lineup every week for wide receivers, and he had an off week this week because of, I think, like you said, when Fields is out of the lineup, it's just a completely different team. Yeah, yep. They can't get it to him.
Look, the upgrade of what Moore brought this season was definitely helpful for Fields, right? You saw that play out, a couple weeks or the last few weeks, with the exception of this one. But again, two guys don't make a team, right? You need different levels. You need strengths at different levels, and defensively, forget it. They're lost. I mean, if you let Kirk Cousins beat you, you're done this year.
Yeah, and
I'm just trying to get under Jack's skin.
Defensive coordinator here at the Colts, yeah. So,
yeah.
So he's he came in and picked up a lot of prior Colts defenders that he had coached before. So I don't know if that's part of the problem, but those were some from losing teams that he picked up. Some defensive pieces, but like you said, he got Mack and some others. They can. Or actually, Mac's not on their team anymore. They traded him away. Why would you do that? Why would you do that?
The Raiders too, right? Like they did it as well.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna fly through because we're coming up on the hour mark here. So we got Washington going into the Meadowlands and playing the Giants. Now the Giants have not been a good team at all, but especially at home. They've given up more points. In fact, I think the only touchdown they scored in the first half. They did score against Buffalo, but the first one they did was a defensive pick six against Miami the week before. They are just awful everywhere. And again, this is just not a year where they can find ways to win games. I think Washington, coming off a surprising loss in Atlanta, might have woken them up. I don't think they're an awful team, but I definitely think that with the division game on the road, they're going to wake up a little bit. They come in, Giants lose.
Yeah, this is my coin flip. So another one of my coin flips this week, I would say I want to go with the home team. All right, let's go with the Giants. I'll take the opposite of you on that and go with the Giants, that they win at home because it's a coin flip. I don't have a reason to say that Sam Howell and Rivera's team is going to beat them at home. So they didn't look as terrible as I thought they, and they got Saquon back. So I love Saquon. So, or if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, if it's Saquon, whatever. I'm good with the team. I'd love to see them get Jones back on the field, but I don't think they need him. So
I don't think he's that. I don't think he's the answer anyway. I think as a Giants fan,
I think that Tyrod has another week under center. They build plays for him. Maybe the Giants get a little bit better. The defense still looks pretty decent. So
they did look good. They did look good against Buffalo. So again, I like what Tyrod did, but we'll see if he could do it again against a division matchup. That's it for the 1:00 game. So moving into the late window, Arizona heads up to Seattle. Seattle coming off an interesting loss against Cincinnati. And, Cincinnati might have righted the ship, winning 3 of their last 4 after a very slow start to the year. So interesting to see them back into the mix of things and in the fold of being competitive and the threat week after week. Arizona coming off a tough loss in LA. I think the Rams are not awful, and I don't fault Arizona for losing a game like that. I think I did pick them to win because I liked what I saw out of Dobbs the last few weeks before that. But I also like what I see out of Seattle, especially at home. They're always dangerous. They are an 8-point favorite in this game at home. Always a tough place to play. Again, a division game. Man, this is a coin flip for me, even though the 8-point spread. I'm going to go with Seattle losing back-to-back weeks.
Okay. I'm going to take the opposite of that because I think the Seattle team at home is tough to beat. They don't have any major injuries that I can think of on the offensive side of the ball. I think they win at home in Arizona, even though they've been my surprise of the year. Like at the beginning of the year, I thought I could play that Arizona unfan card every week somewhere, and because they were trading away valuable assets. I was wrong. They're playing much better than I expected with Dobbs. I don't think Kyler Murray has any rush to get back. So I think they're going to be decent, but I'm still going to go with Seattle at home win. So Arizona is my loser.
Yeah, Dobbs is making a stake, potentially trade Kyler Murray to another team before the deadline. Who knows? I know there was some ruffling of feathers with that franchise. So coming off the bye week, Pittsburgh heads out to Inglewood and faces off against the Rams. I kind of like this game for Pittsburgh. I think that historically they've done well after a bye week under Tomlin. Rams obviously riding a high victory in a division game against those same Cardinals. I'm going to go ahead and say the Rams blow this one at home. I think Pittsburgh comes out flexing a little bit, especially defensively, and they make a name for themselves.
Yeah, especially if they get Deontay Johnson back out from the bye. Like they've got that other explosive weapon. So you got Pickens and Johnson now that I think that will help the Steelers. So I'm gonna agree with you. I think the Rams blow this one at home.
Other team coming out of the bye week is the Packers, and they head up to Mile High. Denver has an extended break because they played the Thursday night game in week 6. So maybe a couple extra days to lick some wounds and try to figure things out. Packers are not a good team either, man. I mean, it's arguable that Jordan Love is the Russell Wilson of the NFC. They're very similar style quarterbacks, very similar style offenses, and very similar style outcomes where both teams can't figure out ways to win games. This is probably the coin flip of the week for me. Speaking of coin flips, but I think that Packers coming out of the bye week, Broncos at home. I'm gonna take the Broncos to win it, man. I don't like what I'm seeing out of Green Bay. I know they had 1 or 2 weeks where they looked okay, but you got to give Russell Wilson a bone every now and then, man. This has to be it.
Yeah, you're going to think I'm being a contrarian, picking the opposite of you in each of these, but I really think Green Bay with Aaron Jones back this week, hopefully. Yes, they've got a young receiving core, but yeah, I think an extra week of preparation coming out of a bye. I think I go with the Green Bay Packers.
There you go.
Denver's going to lose. Sorry. I always forget to say who's going to lose because this is a losing podcast.
So next, back-to-back division games for the Chiefs this week, both at home. They play the Chargers, who anybody who saw the game last night, that was a tough one for them to blow. I don't necessarily think they played bad. I think that Dallas did not play great. They were able to shut down the running game, which was impressive. Can they contain a guy like Mahomes in a division game on the road? Crucial game for them, in my opinion, just to kind of stay in the thick of things. This could be one of those games where, if those teams are going to split, this could be a one that the Chargers kind of sneak away. I know that the Chiefs are going to show up prepared for it for sure. They too have the extended break because they did play on Thursday night, so they had a little bit more time to prep. Chargers obviously on the shorter week since they played on Monday night this past week. It's hard for me to go against the Chiefs, man. The Chargers go in there and lose it at Arrowhead.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. Short week for the Chargers, extra days for KC. I just can't see them beating that team. So
the Sunday night game is arguably the game of the week on paper anyway. Should have been the 5-1 Dolphins versus the 6-0 Eagles, but it's the 5-1 Dolphins versus the 5-1 Eagles. This game is in Philly. The over-under on this game is a whopping 52 points. I wouldn't be surprised if it went over that. Eagles are favored slightly. I think that's due to their defense, and their defense is definitely better than Miami's defense. Can that defense slow down whatever firepower Miami has right now?
Man, I don't know if anybody can slow down that offense right now other than injuries. Like, I mean, quite honestly, that team is having fun right now. Like, you just watch it and they're having fun. It's hard to imagine that they're not going to continue to be, scoring a lot of points. So yeah, that over under sounds exactly on par for what you'd expect for this game. I say the What do I think is going to happen with this one? This one's a tough one because I like both sides of the ball. I don't necessarily think that the Philly D played as great as they can this past week, especially with Wilson and that team. So I don't know. I'm going to say this is a tough one. What'd you go? This is where I'm going to be a contrarian. What did you say? You said Philly to win?
I didn't pick
Oh,
yet,
you haven't
man.
said yet? Oh,
Nope.
okay. All right.
I'm letting you pick this one first.
Okay, I'm going to pick this one first. I'm going to say Dolphins to lose, even though it's going to be like 52-53 or something like that. There's going to be 100 points scored in this game. It's going to be insane.
I think that Zavarian Howard, secondary of the Dolphins, has not played to his potential, and big games demand big things from your big stars. And I think this could be one of those games where he potentially becomes the deciding factor. Obviously, I think that Hurts is dangerous at home. I think Philly's offense definitely got a wake-up call after facing a tough defense last week, and they're going to be primed to prove that they're still a dominant force offensively in this league. Again, I think that Philly has the better defense. But I'm going to say that the Dolphins pull this one out. Eagles drop 2 in a row, and this could potentially be a turning point in the Eagles season, which forces them to go on a tear moving forward. But this could potentially be back-to-back losses for the Eagles, and Dolphins riding high, man. It's hard for me to go against a team like that that's having so much fun, and they're deep. They got everybody forgets about Jeff Wilson. Jeff Wilson's coming back from injury soon too. And when a chain comes back, and then you have Jeff Wilson and Mostert, I mean, you got a 3-headed monster in that backfield, all of which, by the way, are very capable of catching the ball out of the backfield too. So that's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out. But yeah, I mean, they're so dangerous on the outside, man. Waddle, and they just got Claypool too. So
I know. I was thinking that while you were talking, I was like, oh man, that dude, in the right offense, I loved him coming out of he was Notre Dame, right? He came out of Notre Dame. That kid, I was like, oh, he's going to do fantastic. He's just got the build, the speed, just see lots of great things. And then he gets put into some offenses that just have not they haven't showcased what he's capable of doing. So he set out this last week, but man, once they get him on the field, I don't know if it's this week, but man, that's just one additional weapon in that offensive juggernaut. So yeah, I think a lot of points are going to be scored. I think the defense, I mean, I could be wrong. It could be one of those games where it's definitely an under because everybody's expecting it to be like a shootout, and it could be like a 12-10 game or something ridiculous that we weren't expecting.
It definitely could be. I mean, again, I think the defenses are going to be up to the task, but depends on how much they can go. Final game of the week, Monday Night Football. Niners go up to Minnesota. I think Minnesota is, they got their little victory of the year so far against the division rivals, gave them some sense of hope. All hope will be squashed with the Niners. I think that even if CMC doesn't play, they will figure out ways to build around that offense, not utilizing him in the game plan. Debo is obviously an important cog in that puzzle, but this is an opportunity for a guy like Kittle to step up and just be that secondary threat to Ayuk. I still like what I'm seeing out of Purdy. This was actually the first game he lost from any game that he started. So I think he bounces back in a big way. I think prime time helps with that. Again, I think that this is just an unfortunate year for Minnesota and mostly for Kirk Cousins in a contract year, just playing as awful as he is. But the defense is still the defense. And I think that San Francisco is definitely going to stop that offense, moving the ball and obviously creating turnover. So who knows? Minnesota offensive card might be a good one to play this week.
Yeah, I think Minnesota to lose in this one. I don't think that last week that the San Francisco team played their game plan changed. So the strange thing was, you mentioned Kittle in this game, he could, step up and fill the hole of Debo. Where was he at last week, man? Two targets, 1 reception for 1 yard. In the prior week, he had 3 touchdowns for 80 plus or something like that yards. He had a nice stat line, and he just gone this week. So obviously, just depends on the scheme that he's playing against, or, what the first reads are. And he wasn't it this last week with Debo out. So So yeah, like I hope that we see, Kittle come back and get one of those big games again to help out, especially if Debo's out and CMC's out. And but yeah, I like it that maybe that they got this awful win out of the way early for San Francisco, because I think Purdy needs to get back to playing the way he was playing last year and the beginning of this year, because he seems like the steal of the draft last year, so, and obviously everybody's been saying that, but man, I just hope this isn't one of those unraveling things for him. He has a bad week, throws it, multiple interceptions, and then just that's becomes who he is. And then they're looking at Trey Lance, or whoever they got next up. I don't even know their quarterback situation, but
Lance, they got rid of, man. He's
that's right.
He's
down
in Dallas now. So right. We got Seth saying that the Niners are going to crush Minnesota by 30. And then on the other side, we have a very, very bold prediction, which we're going to flag and put into the historical records here. Minnesota wins the Super Bowl. We heard it here first. We heard it here first because nobody ever thought of even contemplating that. But I guess hope is what we all strive for here, Jack. So
yeah, I don't know, Jack, but it sounds like me and Jack have our fan eyes on, and we're like, oh yeah, the Colts, still have a chance for the Super Bowl. I don't think the Colts or Minnesota have a chance for even making the playoffs, the way they're playing right now. So, but
and the way that Detroit is just manhandling that division, right? I mean, okay, so let's wrap this up real quick, man. So just to kind of put a cap on the week's games, in addition to everything that we discussed, this is a huge week of bye weeks. It's the first big week of bye weeks. There are 6 teams that are shelved this week and will not be playing. Carolina, Cincinnati, Dallas, Houston, New York Jets, and Tennessee are all on their byes. It's an interesting year for bye weeks this year, and we'll get into that as the season continues to unfold. There's some weeks where there are no bye weeks. There's some that are 2 teams. There's some that are 6 teams. Either way, this is one of those big weeks, and frankly, it's a week like this that the standings in the Unfantasy League are going to get thrown upside down. Anybody that is missing cards or have cards, we have the free agency wire that is open. We also have packs that are available. We have awarded cards that are going out to the Unfantasy team losers for the week. The weekly winner, the weekly loser, and the 1 yard short will get 2 additional cards as well. And then, of course, the week starts Thursday night football, Jags at Saints. If you have any of these teams in your lineups or you want to put them in your lineup, make sure that lineup is set before Thursday. If not, make sure your final lineup is set before Sunday. And then, of course, we have the pick 6. We didn't really discuss that because, John wasn't here, because he would have loved to gloat about that one. He picked New England across the board this week in all 5 categories and pulled out the win. So I think his team name out of protest was Show Me Your Kansas City's Protest, where he was kind of like fighting against his beloved Patriots. So that one is definitely up for grabs. That's an easy $100 that you can snag. Make sure you get those picks submitted well before Sunday if you want to select Jacksonville or New Orleans in any of those lineups. And whichever ones you want for Sunday, just make sure they're locked in before then. Any final thoughts before we end this up, man? I mean, I really appreciate you jumping on. It's been a lot of fun, dude.
Yeah, I had a great time. 2 minutes of prep and literally 2 minutes of prep.
2-minute drill, man. 2-minute drill.
It was the 2-minute drill. So I came in the clutch, and I apologize if I overtalked because I just get excited about this stuff. So I love everything that you guys are doing. I can never replace John as your co-host for this, but this was a great time, and I look forward to seeing how my picks do this week. And definitely good advice on getting your lineups with your bye weeks considered, because that's a big piece. Definitely with 6 teams out.
That's what's going to shuffle up the standings, is going to make, again, you're never really out of this league, right? We've seen this week after week. John just finished in the basement. I guarantee you he's not going to stay there. And that, that the same invite goes out to anybody else as well. Anybody that wants to come on and, have some fun with us here on Trash Talk Tuesday, just hit us up, man. We'll send you the link. You can pop in, even if it's not for the full hour or so. You can just come have some fun, rip on John. I'll be more than happy to back you up on that. And, we just have a lot of fun doing this. So appreciate you guys as always. Enjoy the week. Enjoy Thursday night's game in the Superdome. Enjoy the week's games. We're going to Richmond, buddy.
Yeah, Richmond, Friday. Excited. Can't wait to see you again in person. So that'll be fun.
Definitely will. Definitely will. Have a good one. Safe travels, and I'll see you in Virginia.
Yeah, see you there.